What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Bunch of stuff to talk about from yesterday, including the big sales numbers, the big debut from Splatoon 2, and the Switch surprisingly having quite a bit of stock to sell through, kind of out of nowhere. I mean, I'm sure they stockpiled it, but we'll get to that in a minute. I also want to quickly touch on something from yesterday's Newswave about Minecraft on the Switch. There were a lot of people voicing some concern about the bump from 720p to 1080p possibly hurting the frame rate, but go figure, Digital Foundry takes care of that. They did a full analysis and showed that it actually runs better in some cases, despite there being over twice as many pixels being displayed on screen with the Switch. So, good news all around. I would check that video out. I'll leave it in the description. It's a very cool watch. Digital Foundry does some good work. But with that, let's get started. First thing up, though, we're going to talk about the sales from Media Creates. I talked a little bit about Famitsu's numbers. Their numbers seem to be a little skewed at times. I'm going to stick with Media Create like usual. But we did get a good look at Splatoon 2 sales numbers that we all thought were going to be massive. As far as I can tell, these are all physical sales. These don't include the digital sales, much like really any of them do, because it's hard to track digital. Unless you're Nintendo, you would know then, which we'll have to wait till their next quarterly report to see, well, how many digital and physical sales Splatoon 2 did overall. This is just Japan. So they started off with Splatoon 2's number starting at 648,000 units sold through. That is massive, by the way. That is a huge amount of sales, and those are just physical. There is a chance that with digital added, it could have touched 1 million. It's very possible, and that would be a massive, massive attach rate there. Over 80%, I would say, because down from there, we could take a look at the number of Switches that did sell that week in Japan at 98,999, so just below 100,000 Switch units moved through retailers that week, with obviously the biggest time probably was that Thursday, Friday, Saturday, where everyone was either pre-ordering Splatoon 2, coming in and picking them up along with a Switch, or even buying a Switch ahead of time, knowing, hey, Splatoon 2 is coming out this week and I need it. Japan, obviously a massive backer of that series, and this is huge because the original Splatoon debuted somewhere around 150,000 units in its first week, so massive growth with this sequel. Now, it does put the lifetime sales for the Switch right around 1.2 million in Japan. It's going to keep growing if they can keep the stock really there. That's the problem. It's very supply constrained right now. I have a feeling if they could keep the stock coming, they might be able to sell close to 70, 80,000 Switches every week if the supply was there in Japan, and they would break out into the, like I said, we'd be measuring 2-3 million units consistently throughout the year. Probably every year you'd see that many drop in Japan without issue. And in no time, it would probably be up to where the PS4 is now, which leads us to the PS4 quickly. I do want to say Sony made a big move, ended up over 5 million PS4s sold in Japan, which is great because originally the PS4 did not sell super well in its first couple of, really a couple months in Japan. Had a very slow start, but it picked up as they added more Japanese-based titles. And now, look, 5 million units sold through. It's still trying to catch up to the Vita. That really is a testament to how popular portable gaming is there. The Vita is at 5.6 million. They still sold 4,500 Vitas despite Sony pretending like it doesn't exist. Also, I don't want to forget about the 3DS because the 3DS also still has a lot of steam behind it with the 2DS LL, as they call it there, which is the 2DS XL over where I am, which will be out this Friday. Should be cool, but it's been out there for a few weeks now, and it's not, it's pretty straightforward as to why that number is as big as it is. And now next week is going to be interesting for the 3DS because Dragon Quest XI will be on store shelves this weekend, and then obviously going into next week, we'll see Media Creates for like the Friday, the Saturday, much like we did here for Splatoon 2. We'll see a similar kind of window for Dragon Quest XI, so we'll see how that moves on the PS4 and the 3DS, the 2DS, all of those. And it'll be interesting to see how many more PS4s move off the shelves along with the 3DS because of that game. That game's going to be popular in Japan. We all know this. There's even a really cool bundle, as we've talked about before, that has a PS4 and the 3DS Dragon Quest XI. Be curious if that is counted in Media Creates as well. But I would keep an eye for Dragon Quest XI next week. It should be really interesting. I also don't want to forget about the third system in the big three. That's the Xbox One in Japan. They sold 77 Xbox Ones. That's actually up, believe it or not, from last year this time at 55 this same week last year. So technically they did increase their numbers. And while their year-to-date sits a little over 5,000, their lifetime is 80,639. I guess they're moving systems. Now, it's going to be very interesting when the Xbox One X comes out, because that's going to be twice the cost of what this Xbox One S is that's having a hard time selling there. I really am going to be curious to see how that actually sells in Japan, because even the PS4 Pro does not sell anywhere near what the regular PS4 sells, and I have a feeling price has a lot to do with that, despite it even being like $100 to $150 difference depending on where you shop. The Xbox One X, man, that's going to be twice the price. So I don't know. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens with the Xbox One X in Japan. I think at this point, Microsoft is kind of writing off Japan as a lost cause for them currently, despite Phil Spencer saying he would love to get that market on their side. I'm not sure how they're going to do it at this point. It's just too late in the life cycle. They might have to restart the next generation. But yes, big props to Nintendo with Splatoon 2. It's a great series to sell in Japan. Obviously, it does really well. And at 650,000 or so without any digital sales, massive success so far. I see that game easily touching 6-7 million, no sweat, in the Switch's lifetime overall. Maybe more than that even at this point with how the Switch is selling, since that's going to be a competitive kind of shooter that it lives only on the Switch. So if you want Splatoon 2, well, you're getting a Switch. Or if you're getting a Switch for competitive shooting, well, you're probably getting Splatoon 2, because there's not a lot else out there right now. Maybe in the future there is more when third parties start to see the Switch maybe is worth developing for. When we get to the point where it has, 13, 14 million units next year, then you might see stuff like Call of Duty or something else pop up. I think really at this point, despite me not liking the microtransaction type Call of Duty 4 remastered, that would actually do really well on the Switch, I think. I think moving that over would give them a little extra life on the Switch with a new Call of Duty game that is technically older on the other systems, but it becomes portable on the Switch, so why not? I guess the only other question here is, where do we go with the Switch after this week? Do we go back down to the 25,000, the 30,000 next week? Or is this kind of a new thing for Nintendo, where they have been stockpiling Switches and they're ready to kind of follow up the next week and the week after with Splatoon 2 with more Switches? Or was this just a very quick push, big effort for Splatoon 2's launch just to get more Switches out there? Very interesting next week as well to see, well, how the Switches decline or stay the same. I don't think they'll have 100,000 units going forward every single week. I do see that dipping down a little bit, maybe down into the 30s or 40s. 40s would be good if they can get it around there. But there is going to be that hangover week for the Switch where they put everything out they could, and now there's going to be some stragglers coming out. So 25, 30, maybe 40 if they're lucky, but we'll see. I'm going to stick with sales numbers for just very quickly. We did get word that Persona 5, this was on Sega's stream yesterday, that Persona 5 has actually topped 1.8 million units shipped out to stores, and that is a massive accomplishment for what was once a very, very niche following for Persona. It looks like at this point, Persona, with the Persona 5 that came out, it has become more mainstream now. 1.8 million, topping probably 2 million by holiday is massive on their part, considering, well, it came out on one system with the PS4 and technically the PS3 if you want to count that. Everyone probably bought it on the PS4. But that's a big deal for them. I hope they continue really the work and move towards Persona 6 and continue to grow the series. It's a great series. It's been around for a long time. I mean, I was playing it on the PS1 forever ago. I also played a lot of the Shin Megami Tensei games like Digital Devil Saga, which is really cool. I would love to see them kind of get into something like that as well. Try to build that to mainstream, but hey, Persona 5, almost 2 million units. It's good stuff all the way around there by Atlas and Sega. Next up, we are getting kind of the next generation, I guess you'd say, of USB. Technically not a full jump to like USB 4, but we are getting something called USB 3.2 that is going to center specifically around USB-C. Now, we know more about USB-C, especially, well, a lot of you guys that maybe wouldn't have cared before because the Switch was paired with USB-C. And that's a big deal for the Switch, obviously, because the connector is a great connector. It's kind of more of a future-proof connector, and it's great because you can plug it in either way. Great. But it looks like they're going to be adding on going forward. Now, this is going to be directed towards future hardware. It's not going to be used from what we've seen, or at least the announcement said today, that's going to be used in older hardware. It's specifically going to be used in newer 3.2 enabled devices. But what happens here is that they are going to be effectively doubling transfer speed. So if you're a big fan of transferring like massive raw footage or files and you use Thunderbolt, but you wished, wow, I wish USB-C was using something a little faster than USB 3.1, because trust me, Thunderbolt is very fast. Well, it looks like they are going to try to make that more of a reality, or at least make USB 3.2 3.2 more competitive with Thunderbolt by effectively doubling the speed. So what's going to happen is they're going to release new USB 3.2 devices that work with the USB 3.2 protocol, and it's going to work with any of your existing cables as long as they're rated for 5 gigabits per second or 10 gigabits per second. That's a big thing. You got to check your certifications because sometimes they're just not there, and you're going to get lower speeds than what you think you should be getting. In this case, though, there are multiple lanes running between either end through that cable. And currently, USB-C along with 3.1 is using 2 of the 4 lanes that are available. They use one for reading and one for writing. And that's great because it does give you decent speeds, but at this point, they're going to enable the other 2 that are kind of left off the map right now. So you will effectively be doubling speed because there'll be 2 more lanes. Great. And what does that account to? Well, according to them, they have some transfer speeds on average up to about 2 gigabytes per second. And that's great. That is good stuff. And you can still use the same cables, again, as long as they have the correct certification. When is this coming out? We don't know yet. We just know the announcement was made yesterday, and we can look forward to, I guess they saved us the cheapest part of the equation. Of course, it can be built into some of the older hardware, but at this point, you're going to probably end up having to buy a new motherboard or new cards that are working with your PCIe lanes. It's going to depend on what they need from your board, but more than likely, you'll be buying new devices for 3.2 if you want double the transfer speed, but at least they're working on it, and they're working more towards USB Type-C, which is awesome. And our last bit of news, again, I'm going to touch on something we talked about the other day in Newswave, which was Sims 4. Remember how we saw that come up in the Xbox Marketplace randomly, where it was like, hey, look, Sims 4 is over here, guys, and we couldn't figure out what was going on. We thought maybe it was an Xbox exclusive and they're pulling it over from the PC. Well, it looks like, according to EA, it's coming to both the PS4 and the Xbox One November 17th. They also went on record to say that both versions will pretty much be identical, whether it's the PC, the PS4, or the Xbox One. I'll want to see if there's any differences in resolution and frame rate, obviously, because that does change between platforms. But in this case, you're not getting a watered down port, according to them. What you see on the PC is what you would play on the PS4 and the Xbox One, with the added ability of using your controllers. Now, they said nothing about user mod support, so if there's no mods there, more than likely the PC version will still be the better version. But in this case, at least the option's there for console gamers, because The Sims was popular at one point in time on consoles. Tons of Sims games back during the Xbox PS2 and GameCube era. Tons of them. We did see some in the PS3 and the Xbox 360, but for the most part, that was like the golden age of The Sims on consoles. And it looks like they're at least bringing Sims 4 over to the PS4 and the Xbox One. Nothing about Switch release, but it sounds like they've been working on this for a little while. And you know what? I don't know how well it's going to sell anyway, because it's a bit of an older game. But there are still Sims fans on consoles that maybe want to play it by just popping it in, not having to sit keyboard and mouse at a computer screen. I get that. Couch gaming is nice without having to set up a PC in your living room. And in this case, you pop it in November 17th, you can get your copy of Sims 4 and start playing. And that's it for Newswave today, guys. Make sure you comment, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Let me think about anything that we talked about today, whether it is the Media Create sales with Splatoon 2 pretty much owning Japan along with the Switch this past week. Not a big surprise. I think we all knew that Splatoon 2 was going to kind of kick the door in with a ton of sales based on pre-order numbers, and the Switch was the big question mark. Would Nintendo get enough out there? Yes, they definitely got enough out there with 100,000 Switches hitting retail shelves that week. I hope the lotteries went really well for everyone then, or maybe they didn't even have to have lotteries since there were so many Switches out there. Great stuff there. Also, let me know if you're excited for USB Type-C with 3.2. It's kind of, you're getting to the point where we're saying letters and numbers with decimals, but let me know if you're excited for USB 3.2. Maybe you're a big data junkie who likes to move data back and forth, maybe for your job, or maybe you do a lot of video editing like I do. In that case, yes, that's going to be awesome. That's it for now, guys. I'll see you guys next time.